Science-based and bro lifters have been arguing since I started following the fitness industry, and it's becoming more and more clear that it's ultimately a never-ending debate. The worst thing science-based lifters do is try to point out when bro lifters use or promote a training style that has been proven by science and try to claim that they're actually a science-based lifter due to that, and the act of science itself precedes the concepts that we choose to study. And before you assume that this is just a video where I call out science-based lifters and defend the bros, don't get it twisted, I hate them both equally. But when it comes to science-based lifters, they could definitely use a slice of humble pie. Not only are they hypocritical about various things, which I'll touch on later, they're also straight up disingenuous fairly regularly. The best example I can think of is one we've all heard before. If you've spent any time observing the science-based fitness niche, the example I'm referencing is when science-based lifters try to claim that the bros, who regularly emphasize the importance of effort, are actually science-based because science proves that training hard is important and better for gains. First off, this is disingenuous because they know that effort has been a highly touted variable long before science actually proved it, and even then the science has been pretty flip-floppy and pretty blurry in that entire time, but besides the point. Because it was clearly proven through anecdote and empirical data. The science-based lifters will say whatever they need to in order to claim dibs on that concept by downplaying anecdote and implying that science is the only valid way to confirm any hypothesis or observation, while conveniently ignoring the flaws and potential flaws of any scientific study. Keep in mind, science as a method is an attempt to seek truth, but it's regularly being leveraged by influencers trying to prove themselves right rather than to try and seek truth at the potential expense of their ego. I also wanted to mention, Barbell Apparel has officially dropped their Frontier flannels. For anyone that's been following the channel forever, I've worn a flannel in pretty much just about every video except for certain training logs. It's actually the one you're seeing me wear right now during my rows, and I've been a flannel connoisseur for a very long time. I've always tried to collect high-quality luxury flannels, so to be able to have a sponsor that's officially making them is just an incredible feeling. If you want to support the channel, just go to my link in the description, check out my collection on Barbell Apparel, and you can find the flannels there. There's a bunch of different colors. I'll try and put some up on the screen, a bunch of different sizes too. You've actually been seeing me wear a couple of them for probably the past 6 months or so on the channel, not knowing that it was a future Barbell Apparel release. They were just kind of some prototypes that weren't quite finished yet, but I can definitely say the final product, which is the one I'm wearing here, it's perfect. It's not too tight around the shoulders. It's not too baggy around the waist. It's designed for someone that lifts with a good physique, and it's designed to not only emphasize your physique, but not to like fit super tight around the forearms or the shoulders like most of these things do, and being super loose at the waist. So as someone that loves flannels and wears them pretty much every day, I can hands down say this is the best flannel I've ever worn. So yeah, with all that being said, let's get back to the video. If you get a flannel, I really genuinely hope that you enjoy it. Not only is it worth pointing out the disingenuity of science-based lifters, it also needs to be said that with lifting having as many variables as it does, it's very easy to put one training variable on a pedestal without realizing you threw another one off the cliff. Look at the current landscape of the fitness industry. With the absolute hyper-focus and obsession on the stretch, people are promoting the stretch without realizing what is being sacrificed in order to get the stretch because they're tunnel visioned on that one variable. And I have nothing wrong with seeking ways to incorporate training variables or methods that science seems to be revealing as important, but we have to remember that there will be other variables that we simultaneously don't understand as much, or that we forget about, or even variables that we aren't even aware of for various reasons. Think about the stretch, for example. Who cared about it 10 plus years ago? Now everyone's obsessing over it. I'm not saying the stretch is invalid, but what's the next version of the stretch? What if it's stability? If stability is the next big trend, then we got a lot wrong. Look at Dr. Mike's lying dumbbell curl. I'm not saying it's a terrible lift, but what if the stretch is only beneficial if there's sufficient stability? All of anecdote, history, and just logic itself strongly indicate that stability is very important. Not only do you not know what you don't know, it's also easy to forget certain things. maybe recent science has wrongly indicated that a certain training variable is less important than previously thought, or maybe it's just straight up human error, which we're very prone to, especially when lifting is a long-term game, and some advanced lifters are years or even decades removed from truly fixating on the basics. Take the Dr. Mike and Jeff Nippard science-based arm workout from the other day, for example. They did overhead extensions where the shoulders extend as the elbows flex and vice versa. In minutes before that, Mike claimed that the long head of the triceps get worked from compound pulling movements like rows and vertical pulls. That just straight up defies logic and science. I know some people don't understand why that doesn't work, and just to explain it quickly, it's because the triceps long head is biarticular, meaning it crosses two joints. The functions of the triceps long head are to extend the elbow and to extend the shoulder. If you extend the elbow, the long head of the triceps will be worked. However, if you simultaneously flex the shoulder, you're shortening the muscle at the elbow but lengthening it at the shoulder, effectively canceling out the elbow extension and preventing the long head from actually contributing to the movement, which is the purpose of the movement in the first place. Now, the lift is effective for the lateral and medial head of the triceps, with the front delts as a secondary mover, since it's like a hybrid press, almost like a JM press. But this is a clear example of hyperfixating on the stretch and trying to bend the elbow as much as possible and somehow forgetting that the movement at the shoulder basically cancels all that out. This concept is exactly why the hamstrings won't grow from squats. It's why the biceps won't grow much from compound pulling movements. Side note, if you haven't seen GVS's recent video on the Micahs or till Jeff Nippard's science-based arm workout, he basically covers my thoughts exactly. It's worth checking out after this video, of course, because I desperately need ad revenue to fund my gym equipment addiction. I've dedicated the start of this video to calling out the science guys, but the bros aren't going to be let off the hook either. The bros are somewhat hard to categorize because according to the science guys, anyone that doesn't align their views perfectly with whatever views are currently trending within their community is somehow a bro. Just like American politics, where if you support free speech, you'll get labeled a bigot, which is technically a good thing. There's something attractive about the mindset of the bros. They're old-fashioned, hardcore, and do what they want without overthinking anything or being timid, which is genuinely refreshing. The problem I have is when they try to talk about training methods. A lot of the time, they either don't understand what they're talking about, or they're at least just not very articulate. The science-based guys tend to write off the bros, which is a pretty easy thing to do considering we live in an intellectual world, and the bros just can't formulate articulate arguments, regardless of their intelligence or experience level. For example, if you look at the whole debate about barbell rows, the science-based guys come at it with actual arguments, like the lack of stability, the poor strength curve, the stimulus to fatigue ratio, etc., and the bros counter with lazy anecdotes like how the barbell row was used throughout history, and that all jacked guys have done barbell rows before. They're more hardcore and whatnot. It's not that these are invalid arguments, but they don't prove anything. You could easily make the case that barbell rows have been favored historically simply because more people have had access to them, and they are invented before fancy new machines. And you can easily say that all jacked guys have done them before because they're popular, and any experienced lifter has tried basically everything anyways. The problem I have here isn't the lack of cohesive argument from the bros, because why should we expect that? They don't care about debating methods, they just do what works for them and care about results. The problem I have is the science-based guys writing them off and dismissing them because that's not the case. A lot of professional athletes wouldn't make great coaches simply because they can't effectively communicate things to other people. That doesn't mean their strategy and methods don't work. It just means they don't understand them at a conscious enough level to articulate them effectively. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter about their ability to articulate or communicate these things. It's about observation and the method and what they're doing in practice. So how do we understand and benefit from the bros training methods without falling victim to leveraging them to make ourselves feel intellectually superior? First off, it's to be humble when having discussions and aim to discuss things in good faith. Second, it's to look at what the bros are trying to say, not hold them to a level of articulation of a philosopher. When the bros advocate for barbell rows, They're implying that it's easier to train hard and progress on barbell rows because they're a hard lift that generates a lot of stimulus. There's strength standards surrounding them. Their favorite bodybuilders have done them. They're saying machines don't give them the same hardcore feeling because they're more isolated overall, removing the need to brace and stabilize with the core and with the legs. While that doesn't affect the stimulus to the target muscle in rows, it can have an effect on the lifter's desire to push that lift hard. Barbell rows require a baseline level of effort just to maintain the isometric hinged position, so you're already outside of your comfort zone, which makes pushing the lift hard feel much easier in comparison. Add that to the fact that you can use some momentum fairly easily, which smooths out the strength curve regardless of whether they know what that means or not. Like, look at lifters throughout history. I guarantee if you ask any 99% of pro bodybuilders why they did sheet rows in their career, they have no, they probably don't even know what a strength curve is. Like, they just do them because they know it works and it feels good. So it doesn't matter if they say that or not, it's about what they do. A lot of lifters idolize golden or silver era lifters who used barbell rows liberally. When you take those variables into account, it's pretty easy to see why they love barbell rows. And of course, this talking point isn't about why barbell rows are underrated or overhated or anything. It's just to point out how the supposed intellectual science-based lifters somehow can't comprehend these basic arguments due to their own intellectual dishonesty. So, just to kind of talk about barbell rows for 2 seconds here, my personal stance on them, I mean, most of you guys already know them. I think on paper, from an objective perspective, they're just an inferior lift to anything that's length and bias. So like the plate-loaded machine row that I just got that you're seeing me doing, that is on paper and in practice, as long as you apply equal effort, it is going to be superior to a barbell row. But either way, this video is not about barbell rows. That was just the example. I want to prevent any confusion on that topic. It might seem like I'm siding with the bros still, but I'm not. I just think they're talked down upon, when more often than not, they train harder and more seriously than their science-based counterparts. So they deserve more respect, and just because they're people anyways, they shouldn't be disrespecting. With that said, I'm not opposed to debating them. The main gripe I have with them is the equal dismissal of any new information. I regularly get comments on this channel of guys saying that we have nothing left to learn about lifting, and what worked in the 50s still works today. And while that's technically true, a lot of things that worked in the 50s that would still work today, they just don't work as well. My video called Just Stick to the Basics covers this concept in depth, and if you haven't seen that video, I highly recommend watching it. Again, after this one, of course, I need that ad revenue. Basically, my argument is that even if the best of the best lifters haven't improved much in decades, look at the other 99.9% of lifters. Their physiques have absolutely improved. For someone that isn't in the top 1% of the genetic pool, they'll need to optimize variables in their favor, and this requires understanding the basics, not as lifts, but as concepts. The bench press and squat have been staples throughout history, but somehow nothing has stuck for the other muscle groups in the body, aside from arguably the deadlift. The bros will argue that it's clear, and barbells are the best implement to add size, and machines are just the coward's way out. But if you look at the reason why the barbell bench press stuck around and the barbell curls never lived up to that status, even though the pecs and biceps are held to a similar standard in terms of physique preferences for the vast majority of lifters, it's because the basic compounds of the barbell bench simply don't apply to barbell curls. A barbell bench press has a length and bias strength curve. So do most time-tested classic lifts. A barbell curl is mid to short biased, which is not the case for most classic lifts. The bench also has a direct opposing force via the bench. The curl has an opposing force at the floor, but lacks anything else to stabilize. To cut to the chase, the strength curve and resistance profile are common themes throughout lifts that survive the test of time, along with stability. To ignore these variables as gimmicky new trends is just ignorant. Sure, they're just being discovered now, but they weren't invented now. They've always been there, and they've stood the test of time. You just weren't observant enough.